As I said before, I know when I travel, I draw. I sometimes draw on napkins when I don't have the paper. Wonderful, because very absorbent, so you have to work very fast, more spontaneous. That's obviously Piazza Navona, Italy again, Senghia. These are concept sketches. I try to do a drawing a day because I believe that drawing is very much also like being an athlete. You've got to be well trained, you've got to be on the dot. And if I don't draw for 3 or 4 days, I almost have a fear of actually putting the first dot or line on the piece of paper. It's a scary thing. This was an illustration because I did a book on Kane, incidentally the first architect. So this was an idea of what the city of Enoch might have looked like. These were a series called Metopoli, very complicated drawings, which I enjoy doing. And this is one project which I do regret never happened. This was years back. But if you look at the citadel of Goldsworth coming up from the Marcel Forum side, its visual form is very reminiscent of an aircraft carrier. So it's the fortress of the land and the fortress of the sea. And the idea was, what happens with the passage of time? The citadel was, in fact, a war machine, a defensive war machine. The aircraft carrier was also a war machine. Today, the walls of the citadel are open and tourists roam in. The aircraft carrier lifts now become bird baths, so the passage of time has transformed what has been originally a lethal war machine into something which you are invited to actually walk into. Then there is sculpture, create atmosphere. I am particularly interested in creating an architecture which caresses and which cuddles. If only we could create an architecture which cuddles, as opposed to an architecture which, because space is mood manipulative. I can design a space which can make you feel nervous. I can design a space which does, in fact, caress and cuddle you. So these are various. This is a garden which is dedicated to my wife, Miriam. And so we're somehow trying to create loci which enhance the spirit and enlighten the soul. So, in a way, quiescent dreams in borrowed time. We need to be able today, in this world which is full of noise and which is chaotic, to find somehow a sense of peace, a sense which actually gives us, it's back to Vitruvius's Venustras, what lifts the spirit, what actually lifts the soul. We have to learn to see how the geography of a space actually influences the geography of the mind. In a way, what I'm trying to do is to, going back to Johann Prolasman, who says, you can smell architecture, you can touch architecture, you can see architecture, you can hear architecture. There's a wonderful phrase in his book, The Eyes of the Skin, where he says, when I was at the Acropolis and walking through the Parthenon, I had a great urge to taste the marble. I think that's absolutely amazing. Somebody here in the audience might recognize this particular house. And so, in a way, what I'm trying to do is to create an architecture which takes its inspiration from literary tales. I'm a great reader. So, the literary tales of great authors like Italo Calvino, Invisible Cities, Ben Ockrey, Astonishing the Gods. These are books which are well worth reading. C.S. Lewis, Jorge Luis Borges. Borges had this wonderful phrase. At the end of his life, he was blind, and he was once asked that if you're blind, why do you travel? He said, because it is more important to feel a place than to see it. How to. And those are about all the haptic ways. That's why I understood the land. And unlike us today, the land had more meaning. They knew that the land provided crops for them, but they were also aware of the fact that husbanding the crops, when to plant, when to sow, when to gather, depended on the movement of heavenly bodies. So many of the so-called temples were in fact carried as in stone. And it's amazing, when you think back, perhaps, although we still have so much to learn, perhaps we have even more to remember.
Thank you, Richard.
To still remain a student, I think this is essential. This keeps me going. And keeping young. The body, unfortunately, doesn't perform the way you want it to be. My brain sends out messages to parts of my body, and all I get is not in a position to respond. So there are difficulties, but you learn to cope with them. Now, definitions of architecture. Goethe, I think, once defined architecture as frozen music. I don't know whether that makes architecture molten music. Nietzsche has said that the power of form is transformed not orally but visually in architecture. Philip Johnson, who had a rather humorous touch to even his own architecture, had said that architecture is not really very different from the oldest profession. They feed to actually provide joy. I don't know whether that is right or not. But my belief is that the real reason for architecture is to give poetry to the pragmatic. Now, some definitions of architects.